Хлопнуть. Готовы?
We were talking about the profession of architectural curator. Which are the challenges of it and the specifics?
I would say that they are curators of architecture and architects who are curators. So curating architecture is a little different than curating art or other types of activities. You have to give an idea of ideas behind the projects, and sometimes of built space. So you have to play with a wide range of scales, a wide range of representations which are often coded and difficult to read for the general audience. So in a way what you have to do is to build narratives which can give a meaning to technical objects which are by themselves difficult to understand. But I think that architects who are curating, and sometimes curating architecture, are dealing with another challenge which is very exciting and which I personally like very much, which is in a way using space to articulate knowledge. And in this perspective, I think that the exhibition, the properly installed exhibition dealing with architecture or probably with art, is a very rich medium. Much richer in a way than the book, which is linear, page read, page after page. Much richer than the internet, which is, as we know, structured like a tree, with branches, with roots, with developments. The exhibition is a three-dimensional space in which one is able to perceive at once the backdrop, the big drawing, the model in front of you, and still remembering the vitrine and the other model now left in your back. So I think the exhibition is a very complex, rich medium for the mastery of which architectural expertise is extremely useful.
Thank you very much. And can we go further on the question? What are the ways to develop megapolises like Moscow today? We were talking about Beijing and Seoul
Yes.
comparison
Yes.
instead of New
Yes.
York and American cities.
Yes. I'll go back to you. Yes, for 1 century the Russians have been obsessed with America, with the idea that the destiny of the Russian cities was an American one. So they tried to build new Chicagos, new New Yorks, new Los Angeles, even the reconstruction of Yalta in 1945 was imagined after the model of Miami Beach. So I think it's time to realize that in real terms, Moscow and Russian cities are probably today developing more closely along the lines of Beijing, Seoul, or Asian cities, as they're based for the most part still on the continuation of a model of collective housing. So, and not a model of single-family housing like the one of American cities. American cities, until now, but they're also changing, were cities where you had vertical downtowns and hugely horizontal suburbs or even ex-urbs. In the case of Moscow, the new developments, the replacement of the 5,000 Pятиэтажники, five-story buildings, their replacement by uniform 25-story buildings is very similar to what is happening in Asia, and much more so than to what is happening in North America. And yet there is probably a possibility of doing better cities or better urban areas here. The condition being to create functionally complex milieus and not only housing dormitory areas. And in some of the projects which were shown last year in Moscow in response to the program of the municipality for the renovation of the living areas, there were some very good ideas about this principle of creating complex urban systems which were not available in the former zoning, rigid zoning-based way of thinking.
Thank you. And Professor, why do you think it is important to build an exhibition like this and to visit it to young Muscovites, young architects, or people interested in?
Well, I think that many younger Russian architects or Russian citizens, Russian intellectuals have no idea of what had developed in the late decades of the Soviet system, which I don't want to say that the period of zastoy, of stagnation, was a creative one, but they were creative people at work fighting against the system. In particular, Alexei Gutnov and the Nerovцы and the members of the NERe group who tried desperately to find an alternative and in a way imagine solutions for the city which have infiltrated the current discourse now. So their drawings, their ideas are important historically and they're also very seductive. They contain an incredible graphic and aesthetic imagination, which is, I think, one of the major contributions of Russian architecture to the world's discourse in the 20th century. You have the 1920s, the constructivists and the urbanists, and then you have НЭРe among a group of other creative people, but they were much more complex and promising. And of course, later you will have the Bumajniki, the paper architects of the 1980s, who were not interested in the urban issues, in the social issues tackled by НЭРe in the 60s.
Thank you very much.
Пожалуйста.
Спасибо большое. Вы завтра уже улетаете?
Завтра, к сожалению, не могу.
Все, стоп, да?